Hello, all. Welcome back to Stories from History, where we talk a little bit about some interesting stories from history, whether that's interesting figures, interesting events, interesting, stories themselves, literature, narrative, whatever it is. If it's from the past and it's interesting, we will enjoy talking about it. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting character, one of the most important writers. I would even go as far as to say philosophers and psychologists in all of human history, William Shakespeare. Um, and as much as we would like to talk extremely in depth and with detail about Shakespeare's personal life, there's not a lot that we actually know. But in this video, we will try to cover as much as we can and give you an insight into this mysterious genius and this titan of English history. So without further ado, let's go on with it. So Shakespeare was born in 1564 in a small market town of Stratford-upon-Avon. And he was named William Shakespeare, the son of John Shakespeare, who was a glove maker and occasional town official, and Mary Arden, who was a farmer's daughter. And nothing at his birth really hinted at the greatness that he would achieve. Stratford was quiet, boring, muddy streets, livestock carts, plague, illnesses. And Shakespeare began here as just a normal country boy. He attended the local grammar school, where the days were long and disciplined. He learned Latin, rhetoric, Roman comedy, history, and this training, though rigid, planted the seed for his later intellectual mastery. Stories of Ovid, Seneca, Cicero, Livy, Virgil. These show up a lot in his future plays, and they're the things he learned at this grammar school. And that's about as much as we know about his youth. And it's that silence around his early years that kind of adds to the mystique of Shakespeare. Now, by 18, this guy was in a hurry. He married Anne Hathaway, who was a woman that was 8 years older than him, in what appears to have been a rushed wedding. She was already pregnant with their first child, Susanna, and twins followed after this, Hamlet and Judith. And then for some reason, he just disappears from the records between 1585 and 1592. These are famously known amongst historians as Shakespeare's lost years. It's a blank space that historians have been trying to fill for a very long time. Did he join an acting troupe? Was he a schoolmaster, a law clerk, a soldier, run away from an unhappy marriage? We don't know. But somewhere in those lost years, the young country boy from Stratford turned into a man with a very keen and ferocious understanding of human nature. So, we skip forward to when Shakespeare arrived in London, probably around sometime in 1587 to 1592. And when he arrived, nobody noticed. He was just another young guy from the country trying to make a living in England's chaotic capital. And at this time, theatres were booming. They were noisy wooden arenas filled with gamblers, drunks, pickpockets, noblemen, sailors, apprentices, ladies in disguise. London had a hunger for stories, for noise, and for spectacle. And Shakespeare began at the bottom, perhaps holding horses outside the theatre for a gentleman, perhaps copying scripts for actors, or perhaps performing minor roles. But slowly the theatre absorbed him, and he absorbed the theatre. So we go to about 1590 to 1594, where he began writing his first plays. And these were full of energy and boldness and youth, like Henry VI, Titus Andronicus, and the Two Gentlemen of Verona. Audiences loved these. They were full of action, bloodshed, comedy, ambition. Shakespeare at this time was seeing what works, seeing what sticks on the wall, learning what made a crowd roar, fall silent, laugh. But by 1592, he'd figured something out, as he began to attract jealousy. The famous scholar Robert Greene sneered at him as an upstart crow, beautified with our own feathers, which in other words means, this country nobody is writing better plays than the university man. Although it was an insult, it confirmed that Shakespeare had arrived. He made a presence and he's showing his genius. But then, as life does, throws a spanner in the works, and the plague hit London. So, London shuts down 1593 to 1594. The plague closed theatres for nearly 2 years, and most actors were starving. Shakespeare pivoted. He decided, I need to change something. In 1593, he dedicated a narrative poem, Venus and Adonis, to the Earl of Southampton, a young, wealthy nobleman. It was daring, erotic, witty, and became a bestseller. Shakespeare then continued with some other poems, and these became bestsellers. They made Shakespeare a literary celebrity before his plays did. He used those plague years to read, to write, and refine, sharpening his craft, shaping his voice, and imagining the works that would soon transform English drama. So now, we go to 1594 to 1599, the Lord Chamberlain's Men. So this is where Shakespeare becomes a force of nature. When the theatres reopened, Shakespeare joined a newly formed company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men, later known as the most famous acting troupe in English history. It was here that he found stability, lifelong business partners, the best actors in England, creative freedom, and a financial stake in the company. And he wrote with the force of a volcano. Between the years 1594 and 1599, he wrote Romeo and Juliet, A Midsummer's Night Dream, The Merchant of Venice, Much Ado About Nothing, The Taming of the Shrew, The Merry Wives of Windsor, and Julius Caesar. So in that 5-year period, he probably created some of the greatest works of art in all of human history. So talk about productive 5 years. And this was kind of peak Shakespeare in the romantic and comedic sense. Dazzling wordplay, useful longing, and a lyrical beauty. And audiences adored him for this. And he became London's most bankable playwright. Then we go to 1599. Shakespeare and his fellow actors make a bold move. They build their own theatre. It rose from timber carried across the River Thames after a daring theft. The men secretly dismantled their old playhouse in the night. See, they'd made an arrangement with the guy that owned their own playhouse. He was shutting it down. And they said, hey, we'll help you demolish this if you let us keep all the timber. And he was like, yeah, sure. But then they went across the river and rebuilt the whole globe and had it for themselves and owned it. And this was a big deal because now Shakespeare had his own place to do his plays. And he became a shareholder, meaning that he earned money not just as a writer, but as a businessman. And the globe was a sensation. It was a throbbing hive of sound, sweat, music, laughter, and danger. Shakespeare here premiered some of his most iconic plays, Henry V, As You Like It, and most of all, Hamlet. Hamlet stunned the city. The audiences were not used to such psychological depth. Long monologues by the prince about death, doubt, existence. This was brand new. And it landed with a force that changed English theatre forever. Shakespeare was not just entertaining, he was evolving the human psyche on stage. And around 1600, Shakespeare entered a deeper, darker phase. These years saw the death of friends, relatives, and rivals, and a lot of political turbulence under the aging Queen Elizabeth. Also, the death of his young son Hamlet, which greatly, I guess you could say, kind of encouraged or added to the creation of Hamlet. And after Hamlet, he made some other tragedies too: Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. And you feel his grief in these plays, you feel his pain. Shakespeare himself had changed. He was a richer, more respected man, but he was also more haunted. The death of his son Hamlet in about 1596 still casted a shadow that echoed in Shakespeare's heart and in the grief of Hamlet on stage. And during this period, he wrote like a man staring straight into the abyss. So, we skip to 1603, between 1603 and 1608. When King James I took the throne, Shakespeare's company was adopted as the King's Men. And this was the highest honor an acting troupe could receive. They performed for the king, became wealthy, and enjoyed protection. And Shakespeare often wrote plays that appealed to James's interests. Witchcraft, kingship, divine right. Macbeth was tailored directly to him. In Scotland, about witches, about kingship. And he also performed at a new indoor theatre, the Blackfriars. Here the audiences were wealthier, more educated, more demanding, and Shakespeare adapted to this brilliantly, writing more intimate, complex dramas for shadowed candlelight. Now, we skip forward to about 1608 to 1613, and we see that after, Shakespeare's tragic cycle comes something strange and beautiful. Shakespeare's late romances are full of mysticism, symbolism, storms, visions, and reconciliations. And these include The Winter's Tale, Cymbeline, and The Tempest. Tempest, written in 1611, is widely seen as Shakespeare's farewell to the stage. In Prospero's final speech, he says, "We are such stuff as dreams are made of." And this felt like Shakespeare speaking of himself. He was older now, wealthy, respected, and above all else, tired. His writing turned towards forgiveness, loss, and wonder. Now, we skip to his retirement and death, 1613 to 1616. In 1613, a fire destroyed the globe during the performance of Henry VIII. Now, Shakespeare had already begun withdrawing back to Stratford, where he lived as a gentleman, tending to finances and family, and he died about 3 years later, in 1616, aged 52, leaving behind daughters, property, and an astonishing body of work. But no explanation of how one man had reshaped the soul of English literature. His colleagues, thankfully for us, published the first folio of his work in 1623, preserving 36 plays that otherwise might have been lost forever. Think about that. Imagine we lost all the Shakespeare plays forever. That's insane to think. There's probably other writers out there that would have changed everything, but their friends didn't publish it. Thankfully, Shakespeare did. And you can still go and see the first folio in London. I don't know exactly where it's held, but you can go and see it. And across this story, we can see clearly what he accomplished. He rose from a commoner to the greatest playwright in England. He co-founded the Globe, the most famous theatre of the age, which you can still visit today in London. He wrote 39 plays, 154 sonnets, and very long narrative poems. He created hundreds of characters who defined human emotion, invented hundreds of words and phrases still used today, and became a wealthy businessman and cultural icon in his own lifetime, transforming theatre, acting, and, literature, kind of, from something about entertainment to an art of psychology and philosophy. No other writer in history diversified storytelling the way Shakespeare did. Now, if you like that video and you have any suggestions, please let us know in the comments. Send a like, subscribe, and share. We're a small channel trying to grow, so any help is appreciated. But above all, have a good day. Keep reading, keep learning. We'll see you soon. Stories from History, signing out.